Thank you, Josh, and good afternoon, Americans. It is a Friday edition of the Jeff Santos Show. We apologize. We've had some technical problems down in Florida, but we are live, and we're looking forward to talking to you at 833-545-5333 and at 2:30 Eastern Time. John Nichols of The Nation magazine, our longest-serving contributor, will join us at that time. Again, folks, we will be replaying this program from when we picked it up here at about 20 past the hour on the platforms, social media platforms of YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, now X, and of course, LinkedIn. We are coming on just a few minutes after the president's legal counsel has come on to talk about the revelations yesterday of the special counsel, which revealed president's age and memory issues, and also trying to deal with, I think, which is kind of ridiculous because, there is no problem with his taking of the reports that were there. And unlike Trump, he actually worked closely with the special counsel. But the big news, of course, was the issue of the memory. And that is what we're going to talk about with John Nichols coming up, and we'll talk about it with you as well at 833-545-5333. You can email me, jeff@revolutionboston.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show as well. Look, I think we got a number of things here to focus on. And, in my view, what you have is a scenario where a lot of the American people are frustrated with Donald Trump. They want to hear more from President Biden, who they like some of the things that he has done. They don't know about all the economic issues that he has already accomplished, and they need to get that message out. And in my opinion, the president has to release the hounds, his surrogates. I would say get younger surrogates, more people of color. I'm talking about Jayapal. I'm talking about AOC in particular. She should be really a headliner. And anyone else that can communicate the economic message. And the president has to stop. He did a little bit last night talking about ceasefire, but he has to cut off ties with Netanyahu. And basically, in my opinion, tell Netanyahu that we're not providing more money for you to basically expand Israel into Gaza. That is a no zone, and he needs to make that clear. Now, I want to say one other thing, too, before we open up the phones and go to our good friend John in Minnesota. The opportunity here for the Democrats to not only pound on Republicans in Congress for their inability to do what they wanted for a long time on this border issue. This is malfeasance. This is behavior that should not allow the Republicans to run Congress, the White House, or anything on a federal level. As a matter of fact, unless you are a moron, you shouldn't be electing them to anything, including dog catcher, because what they do is only for themselves. It's only for themselves. And what they are doing is pocketing their money that taxpayers provide. And they are going around saying, you got to have a border problem. People are coming over the border. These brown people, they're coming to rape your wife. They're coming to rape your daughter. They're taking your job. And all of it doesn't even make it to passing a bill that would actually deal with some of those issues, which, of course, are overblown. Nobody is coming across the border attacking Americans. What is happening, however, is that there is still a problem in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. And until we can find a way to prevent those atrocities from going on there, of rape, of poverty, and so forth, you're always going to have this problem. And similarly in Mexico and in some parts as well. But these are the things that have to be dealt with. The Republican Party has no answers. They haven't had answers probably going back to, the late 1980s. They don't have any answers, including George W. Bush, which led us into a lie. His buddy Cheney should be in jail. So, this is where we are, and we need to make the Democratic Party stronger. and we need to make it more progressive in the Bernie Sanders manner. The highest numbers for Joe Biden in his 4-year term thus far were the first few months where Bernie Sanders' ideas in the American Rescue Plan had him above 60% approval. Hasn't had it close since then. He did a lot with the IRA that kept him going, but he needs to do more. And that's where the Democrats have to go. You got to engage the progressive movement and you make that happen. All right, let's go to the phones. John in Minnesota, you are first this abbreviated half hour. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll try to make it really quick. Biden has to show a backbone,
Mm-hmm.
These people on the other side, they want to destroy this country. Mark has said that, and absolutely agree. They could care less if anything functions because they've got millions of dollars in the bank and they can have lackeys take care of them while the rest of us have our Social Security, our Medicare, and any other kind of benefit, educational benefit, anything taken away. It's just unconscionable why the leadership of the Democratic Party doesn't get it, that you have to really push back and stand up to these people. And even the Supreme Court appointees, as Ellie Mistel pointed out, are spineless. Really, you just have. I'm not worried about a civil war, and in fact, all of the military swear allegiance to the Constitution. It would be really hard for them just to have a coup d'état. But I want to bring these people out. I want to, people to see this is what you're all about. Like DeSantis and the leader from Louisiana. They're just, like you said, it's all about them. It's not about us. And you have to make that point. And also the AFL-CIO has now come out for a ceasefire. So this is real democracy from the bottom. They call, there are some people in my city council who are Democratic Socialists of America. It's not top down. They want to win the ballot to have policies that help people. They're social policies, not anti-social policies. We've had too much of the latter. So it's a time for a change, and you have to. Bullies just don't back down. They are bullies. That's what they are.
But you can punch them in the nose.
Small-minded.
You can punch them in the nose, John, and then they back down then. And that's what we need to realize here. And whether we're talking about Trump, whether we're talking about Netanyahu, and you don't have to do this, of course, literally, but you need to make the case, and they can make the case. They can make the case against every one of those House members. They got a thing going up now in the special election that was vacated by the moron that was using my last name. We don't need to refer to him anymore other than that, but he'll be history. And the Democrats should win that seat, and they should pour every dollar they have into taking that seat back in New York. I know you grew up there. You know the area well. Democrats should not be losing those races in Long Island, and they got to do everything they can. And the same thing goes. They got to make it very clear to Netanyahu that they're cutting off these funds, and that they do it in the next week or so. I think Mr. Netanyahu will have to back down because he knows he's going to lose his entire country, and they need to make it clear where Democrats and where the United States sits on human rights. Thank you, John. We'll talk to you later in the broadcast. Folks, we're going to try to go overtime today online. WCAP will leave us more than likely at 3 p.m. because of this technical issues. We'll update you as we move along. John Nichols is next after this timeout.
Packages for a living? A gas-powered Mercedes-Benz Sprinter delivers. Transport people? A Sprinter van with 0% financing is a 5-star idea. If food delivery is your thing, then a gas Sprinter caters to you. And if you're a general contractor, the Sprinter with 0% financing nails it. With innovation, safety, and technology, Sprinter is built for you. And it's built for your bottom line with 0% financing. The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, starting at just $33,790.
You don't have to wait for amazing deals on a new floor. Get spring Black Friday deals right now at Lumber Liquidators Flooring. This week, save up to 35% on gorgeous hardwood and waterproof vinyl floors. Plus, we can arrange for installation by professional, independent contractors. And with special financing, you can get started today. These are the floors homes are built on. Lumber Liquidators Flooring.
Hi, I'm Karen, owner of Lone Star Transfer. If you are a timeshare owner, getting out is probably a top priority. And now that annual maintenance fees are coming due, this ongoing burden and expense is at the top of your list. Thankfully, we can help. Let us do for you what we have done for thousands of others across the country. Our process is done legally, ethically, and quickly. Lone Star Transfer has a 99% success rate and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We are a family-owned business and will personally make sure your experience is a pleasant one. Don't let another day go by with maintenance fees taking your hard-earned money. Give us a call for a no-obligation consultation at 844-284-4863. That's 844-284-4863 or online at lonestartransfer.com. That's lonestartransfer.com.
Are you living with pain? I was, after a nasty fall. I got relief with 1 Hour Pain Relief. I'm Barry Yarconi, president, and here's Lisa, a Marine who was injured in Iraq.
After surviving an explosion, I was on horrible painkillers for lingering head, shoulder, back, and knee pain, but I hated the dangers and side effects. My friend told me about 1 Hour Pain Relief, and now I'm off the drugs.
1 Hour Pain Relief is the result of 15 years of research on an amazing extract from hops, the plant used to flavor beer.
Whether your pain is from an injury or just aging, you get safe, all-day relief in less than 1 hour.
We're so sure you'll love 1 Hour Pain Relief too that we'll send you a 1-week trial for just a small shipping charge. Call 800-269-9500 right now. That's 800-269-9500. There's no gimmicks, no obligation, no automatic shipments. Stop living with pain. Call 800-269-9500 for your 1-week trial or visit onehourpainrelief.com. That's 800-269-9500.
Supporting the middle class. This is the Jeff Santos Show.
"33 minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show that you are tuned into, folks, coming to you live from the South Coast here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Again, we had some technical issues a little bit earlier, but they now are rectified. So we're going to be going a little overtime for those who are watching and listening on the social media platforms of YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, now X, and, of course, LinkedIn. We will probably, not sure yet, but we'll probably leave WCAP as we normally do at 3 o'clock Eastern time. Our next guest comes to us from Madison, Wisconsin. He is, of course, the longest-serving contributor to the Jeff Santos Show. He is a fantastic author of so many great books. He has co-authored one recently with Bernie Sanders. Of course, the fight for the soul of the Democratic Party, which is still very much a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. He is the fantastic journalist, the national affairs correspondent of The Nation magazine. John Nichols joins us. John, happy Friday, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there, minus all the technical concerns we have, but otherwise we're doing all right. So I was stunned a little bit last night to hear of this special counsel report. We have talked about, the president's health from time to time. And I think, though, that there are a lot of people in Washington and beyond that I have communicated with off the air, you may have done the same thing, that are very worried about this and how it plays in the 2024 election. What are you hearing, my man? And what do you make of it all? I mean, I thought that that it was really, really sad and kind of outrageous by the special counsel to go after his son and about that particular situation. But the rest is all fair, even though, again, it has nothing to do with what the special counsel was told to talk about. Your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, let's put it in perspective. First and foremost, the special counsel is a Republican, Trump-appointed former U.S. attorney, who was given this assignment because, obviously, Biden and Merrick Garland think that Biden had nothing to hide, right? And they were willing to have a Republican investigate. And just imagine if Donald Trump had done that, reversing the order. So it was a pretty honest effort to try and get to the bottom of things. This guy did go in, look at it all, and he decided not to charge Biden for any criminal wrongdoing.
Which is the appropriate outcome.
I think, look, here's the reality. Right, it's appropriate outcome, but it's also the reality that this guy looked at, circumstances and said, man, I'm going to be in real trouble with my conservative and Republican allies for letting Biden off the hook. So I'll throw in all this other stuff about Biden being old and mentally unfit and all these other things. And that'll become the focus of stuff, and I'll still be in good stead with all of my buddies. Now, that's one theory. I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but that's certainly the way that I think a lot of critics of this report have seen it, right? That's the thing they've said. And so they've focused on, her, the former U.S. attorney and special counsel.
Right.
But I have to tell you something else. If we step back from it, right, and we face the reality, according to the latest NBC poll, 76% of Americans have concerns about Joe Biden's fitness to serve a second term, both physical and mental. And of those, 61% say they have major concerns. The majority of Democrats say they have major concerns. So whether you like how this report came together and whether you like what the special counsel did, I think it was gratuitous. But whether you like what he did or not, the reality is this focused attention on an issue that people have been talking about. Okay? And as such, it has kind of forced the presidential race to a new place. It's forced Biden to respond. He did last night an extraordinary press conference. It was pretty remarkable. And it wasn't a perfect press conference. Biden's never had a perfect press conference, right? I mean, it's just, this goes back to when he was a young man. He's always been known for his gaffes and things like that. But it was a solid, pushback against it. What Biden needs to do now, if he's going to continue to be the Democratic candidate for president, if he's going to be the nominee and ultimately defeat Donald Trump in November, is he's got to go out and do this a lot more. He has to do more press conferences, more speeches, more appearances across the country. He's got to get out of the White House and out to the American people. The way to deal with this is not to say that he is fit, but to show that he is fit. And you do that by, at least in a presidential year, you do that by campaigning. People will say, well, you can do it by governing, and that's true as well. And I think Biden's very responsible in that regard. But I mean, this clearly ups the demand on him to go out and campaign. And frankly, I think if he does, he's got a pretty good message, right? His core message is, look, I'm up to this. I'm an old, as he said, I'm an older guy, and it's up, and maybe I'm not perfect, but I know what I'm doing. So he goes out and says that. And then if he does it enough, if he frames it out well enough, then he can start to turn the tide on Trump. Because in that same poll that showed that 76% of the people had concerns about Biden's fitness, 72% had concerns about Trump's fitness, right?
Right.
Now, those concerns were largely based on his criminality and his attempts to overturn the 2020 election.
Right.
And so,
coup d'etat. A lot different. One is health. The other one is basically he's a criminal.
Right. And also notably in that poll, roughly 50% of people had concerns about Trump's mental health and physical health as well. Right. So Trump's got a lot more vulnerabilities here. What Biden needs to do is get out there on that campaign trail and, write the narrative of the 2024 race in a way that it isn't focused on Biden's frailties or weaknesses or vulnerabilities, but it's focused on Trump's. If he does, then I think he's probably still a very viable candidate.
We are chatting with the fabulous John Nichols. You can call in and talk to the nation's national affairs correspondent, and again, our longest-serving contributor at 833-545-5333. We'll start with a good friend Mark in about 2 minutes out of the Bay Area. Let me ask you, John, do you see that there will be more scrutiny by some Democratic donors, by some in the party that will be saying, hey, we have a younger candidate in Gavin Newsom, the governor of the second largest state in the country. We have in Michigan, where there's a lot of problems for the president because of this Palestinian policy. We have Governor Whitmer. Of course, a lot of people, always looking for the home run in Michelle Obama, who's said many times she doesn't want to run, but there will be a convention in Chicago. Wouldn't that be kind of interesting, in her backyard where she grew up? So what do you make of this, and how do we look at the next 2 or 3 or 4 months, to see whether or not, and I hope President Biden's health improves or at least stabilizes, and he can go out on the road. I don't think you can do this. And you understand the political game as well as anybody in this country. I don't think you can keep him in the White House, quote unquote, Rose Garden strategy, and win in November. I just don't think you can do that. The rope-a-dope doesn't work. If he goes on the offensive, however, he, I think, can win. And that's really the only way. And if he can't go because of health, then I think you have to look at other alternatives. Your thoughts?
Well, that's exactly what I was just saying. Look, to kind of go to the end of your question and then work back toward the start. What Biden needs to do is get out of the White House, right? He needs to go out and campaign. He needs to give speeches. He needs to do press conferences. He needs to do interviews. He needs to be available so that he doesn't say that he is fit. He shows that he is fit. People see it on a daily basis, and they say, yeah, the president was just in my state. He, just did an interview with the top TV anchor in our biggest city and sat down for 20 minutes. It was very, very robust and strong. You know what I mean? That's the sort of thing that shifts the narrative, right?
Exactly.
He probably has to do debates. Even with Trump, as difficult as Trump is, because you got to show that strength. Reagan won in 1984 in part. Reagan won very big. It wasn't that hard a race for him, but he won in part, or he won as big as he did because he did debates with Mondale. People thought Reagan was going to be very inept. He actually, at least in several of the debates, held his own quite well, and that really turned the narrative that year. And so for Biden going out there, being present, being engaged at a very high level, that's vital to his reelect. Now, to the start of your question, though, where you raised this issue of will there be people within the Democratic Party talking about another candidate, an alternative contender? Well, the answer to that is yes. It will happen, if not publicly, privately. And Biden will be under scrutiny. I mean, this is kind of taken a backroom discussion and put it on the front burner. And if Biden has missteps, struggles, a health challenge of some kind, which I don't think he has, by the way. I think he's basically been, pretty much managing a very, very tense moment in history. Not as I would do it necessarily. I may disagree with him on many issues, but managing a tough moment. If he does fall below a certain level, and people say, "Wow, this doesn't look good," then you're going to hear a heightened cry for an alternative. The Democratic convention isn't until late in the summer. And so you've got a lot of time, frankly, to reposition if that is the necessity. As regards a potential replacement, look, Kamala Harris will be on the front of that list, whether people agree with her or don't like her, because she is a sitting vice president, and there are certain advantages that come from that. But there would be other people who'd be considered, and of course those include, as you've suggested, Gavin Newsom, Governor Whitmer out of Michigan, maybe several others. And so that's a long way down the line. And frankly, at this point, I would say that is still exceptionally unlikely that such a thing happens. I don't see that occurring, but if it does, frankly, the Democrats have almost wildly big bench, right? And their bench is so big, they have so many potential candidates because they have had, remember, the last time where you didn't have a so-called legacy candidate being the front runner for the Democratic nomination and getting it was in 2008 when Barack Obama beat Hillary Clinton, right?
Right.
But we're talking, that's a long time, right? So you've got a lot of people who would be interested in running for president, who just haven't seen a road up, haven't seen a way to do it. In 2020, as an example, I'll tell you that Sherrod Brown from Ohio seriously considered running for president. He went out a little bit. He did some touring around.
Sherrod.
He determined, Sherrod's a very skilled candidate, and a guy who's won in a really tough place. He went out and determined that he couldn't find a space for himself, avenue for himself in a race where Bernie Sanders was running, because Brown is a progressive populist, Sanders very much a progressive populist, and it was Brown's determination that it wouldn't work. So he didn't run, but that didn't mean he didn't want to run, right? And so
exactly.
The way to understand it, there's a long list. That's not really a problem for Democrats. The deeper problem, of course, is kind of at the heart of this discussion that we're having, and that is the question of, will Biden now, having had this scare, this controversy arise, will he then decide to go out and do what you and I are talking about, what other people are talking about, which is show himself, be present, campaign, work hard, make it clear that he is, every bit as capable as he suggests he is and as his supporters suggest he is. If he does that, all these other issues become secondary.
Yeah, no doubt. We're talking with our good friend, John Nichols, again, the longest-serving contributor to the Jeff Santos Show, Nation Magazine's national affairs correspondent and author of many great books, and one with Bernie Sanders, which I want to ask you about and then go to Mark in San Francisco, who I know has a couple of things he wants to ask you. First of all, how did this whole thing with Bernie come along? And with that, and I don't want to spend too much time on both, but do you think that the potential of opening up to candidates we talked about, Whitmer and Newsom are always talked about, but here's Bernie Sanders, who basically, made the deal with Biden, gave him his highest rating at 60%. And I know they're going to say, well, we're going to get an 81-year-old for an 81-year-old. But, Bernie is 81 going on 41. Biden, kind of more likely that age group. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, again, I think these are all secondary questions. The core question is, will Biden go out and show himself? If he does, I think all this goes to the sideline. If you really were looking at alternative candidates, will Bernie Sanders' name be mentioned? Of course. There's little doubt of that. I see him a lot. I talk to him a lot. He is exceptionally capable. I mean, he's very on top of his game, as people see all the time, both within the Senate and out and in battles over all sorts of labor rights and economic and social and racial justice issues. So, and now on Gaza. So he's up to it, but I don't think he's pining for it. And again, I won't speak for him. Issues like this are things that have to come from people's heart and soul. But I will tell you that I'm sure he could do it. But I don't know that he wants to do it. I don't know that that's where he's looking, or even would be if this option opened up. I think that many people who are associated with Bernie Sanders, who actually backed him, folks like Ro Khanna, have shown an interest in running, more likely in 2028. But I do think that Sanders is focused very much on his Senate work right now. and frankly, on the question of whether he runs for re-election to a 6-year term to the Senate this year. And so I just don't see any evidence that he's kind of positioning or pining for that prospect if a route to a candidacy were to open up. I think there are other people like Gavin Newsom who are much more clearly running, or not running this year, but running for some time down the line. And I think Governor Pritzker from Illinois is also very interested. Governor Whitmer, I think, probably is. And as I've said, Vice President Harris. The bottom line, though, that to be understood is all of these people that we're mentioning could do it, and they could, position for a campaign very, very quickly. And so I think this kind of speculation is better put to the side. And, recognition that Democrats don't have to go search for potential candidates. They've got a plethora of them. Again, it seems, as if I'm reading it right, that the party's instinct is to stick with Biden, and who has just, by the way, won primaries in New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada by landslide margins. So I think the inclination is to stick with him, see how he does. The press conference last night was feisty and strong, again, imperfect, because Biden does gaps, he always has, but still, a pretty muscular performance, and one that suggests to me that he intends to fight. And if he does it on a regular basis, and again is far more in campaign mode than he's been up to this point, I think he puts a lot of these issues to rest. And then again, as we said before, he frees himself up to do what is the essential task of this campaign, which is to go after Donald Trump. Because remember, I hate to tell Biden or anybody else this, but for an awful lot of Americans, the focus in 2024 is not to reelect Joe Biden. It is to defeat Donald Trump, right?
That exactly is the case.
That's not a fun
No, I think
thing.
you're right, and I want to bring
you're...
in our good friend Mark here, because I think that's sort of where his take has been, is making sure that Trump is not winning, not becoming a president in the White House anymore. Mr. Mark from San Francisco, good luck to your Niners this weekend. You're next with John Nichols.
Yeah, John and Jeff, I think Biden should come out and say, the Republican Congress forgot that they took an oath of office to represent the people of this country, and Trump. Because basically, the biggest story to me is that Congress has shown that they are not willing to do the work of the people, that they are working for Trump. And I think this is the biggest story that needs to be broadcast all over the country. They have violated their oath of office. We're paying tax dollars to these people, and they're not representing us. And I think we're harmed, and I think we should go after the people funding the Republican Party for trying to destroy our democracy.
I would agree with that.
Well,
John?
Look, you're gonna have to wait pretty long in line, Mark, to be a critic of this Republican Congress, because it seems like everybody's upset with it, including not just people on the left, not just Democrats, but a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans. The Congress is in chaos. It is a non-functional House of Representatives. The Senate's a little better, but even it's in a tough place because of the deep divisions, the close divide in the membership of the body, but also some divisions within the Democratic Party when you've got Manchin and Sinema still there. And so Congress just isn't doing very much. And that's absurd at a time when there's so much to be done, when there's so much up for grabs. So you've got this baseline thing of this is just a dysfunctional Congress. It's not working. And Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has proven to be, really incompetent, not just as a speaker, but as a vote counter. He was embarrassed repeatedly this week. In fact, if it wasn't for this report, the biggest story of the week would be that Congress is not functioning, or at least one of the biggest stories of the week. And the weird part is, if it was functioning, right, if the House of Representatives really was a smooth running machine, it would be on the wrong side of most issues. And so we're in a situation, Mark and Jeff, where everything we're talking about kind of becomes, a footnote to the reality of the 2024 election. Congress isn't going to get anything done of consequence this year. It's going to be on the sidelines. Maybe they'll get some funding for some foreign aid and some military aid for various wars and activities around the world through. Maybe they'll get, they did do some progress, I think, on a child tax credit. So there'll be a few things that come through. But as regards big, major legislative initiatives, that's just not going to happen. And nothing will happen until after the 2024 election. Then we'll have clarity. If, let's say, and I'm not saying this will happen, but let's say that Joe Biden, really does pull it together in all the best ways and goes out there and mounts a strong campaign, focuses on a core message of how the country has to change. What he wants to do, what his vision is, but also making sure Trump doesn't come to power. And let's say he wins with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. That's what Franklin Roosevelt did at the time of his own ill health in 1944, and he ended up with a strong Democratic majority. And so that can happen. And if it does, then you're going to have clarity. The danger, of course, this year is that
you could lose the House or the Senate
if the Republicans. Right, might be if they won everything, but the reality of kind of the prospect here is that Biden, I think, still has a real chance to win this. I think Democrats have a real chance to take the House of Representatives, but the Senate is looking really tough because there are so many Democratic seats up for grabs, and many of them are in states that are tough states, particularly Montana, Ohio, to some extent Nevada, a couple others, and so it's a kind of a nightmare scenario, but I think that there's a very real chance that this do-nothing dysfunctional Congress continues to be our reality through 2024 and maybe into the future.
Well, that would be help for the country because we get nothing done. And thank you, Mark. I know you have to run. John, if you can stay, we're going to go live online until 2:20 Central Time. You can stay with us to some of it.
Jeff,
no worries.
I can't. Yeah,
no worries.
I'm actually waiting. I'm waiting to do something right at 3.
You're a busy man. No worries. Well, I just will say this as we go.
Sometime next
time. Not a problem. Not a problem. It's been a chaotic day. We look forward to getting you back on next week, and we'll get more into what Biden's tour to talk to the American people will look like. I think people like AOC should be on there. So we'll leave it at that. And next week we can get more into it, my friend. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
It's great to be with you, Jeff, and glad to have you back on air.
Great to be back on air, and particularly with you, my friend. The Jeff Santos Show is brought to you by Mass Peace Action. With over 9,000 supporters in the state, MPA uses the power of grassroots organizing to end war, create a more just foreign policy, and cut wasteful Pentagon spending to support the needs of the American people, like healthcare, education, infrastructure, and the environment. 20 years of war is long enough. To become a member or learn more, visit masspeaceaction.org. Don't wish for peace, work for it.
Haul packages for a living? A gas-powered Mercedes-Benz Sprinter delivers. Transport people? A Sprinter van with 0% financing is a 5-star idea. If food delivery is your thing, then a gas Sprinter caters to you. And if you're a general contractor, the Sprinter with 0% financing nails it. With innovation, safety, and technology, Sprinter is built for you. And it's built for your bottom line with 0% financing. The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, starting at just $33,790.
Are you living with pain? I was after a nasty fall.
Welcome back. It is the Jeff Santos Show. And for those of you who are normally tuning out today because we have some technical issues, we're going to go to about 20 past the hour, East Coast time, 3:20. And we invite you to call in at 833-545-5333. It was really interesting in talking with John Nichols about this situation with Joe Biden, how he has to go on the offensive. We've been talking about this for a long time now. I will say that it is important. And by the way, White House, if you're watching, listening, please bring him on here. We will give him the opportunity to state what he wants and to get his kind of personality. Tough guy. I was thinking about this last night. If any of you, like me, enjoy the Clint Eastwood movies, particularly of the last several years, where he's sort of the grumpy old man kind of thing. But, that kind of image whether we're talking about, Get Off My Lawn, I forget the name of the movie, or Trouble with the Curve, the baseball movie, where he was a scout and they were going to analytics, which, again, baseball has destroyed their sport because of that. And football is looking to do the same thing. And ask Detroit Lions about going forward on fourth down. But, to me, that is kind of the image. He showed a little bit yesterday, did Joe Biden in the press conference. Don't come at this don't come at me with this issue of my son. I know when he died. I pray for him every day. And, there is a understanding there, and there is a humanity to Joe Biden. There is a goodness to him, but there's also a toughness to him. And I think that is necessary to come out right now because he's running against a lunatic. He's got a lot of people that are out there, some in the Democratic Party, who, want to chop him off at the knees. Now, look, like John Nichols, I disagree vehemently on his policy in the Middle East. That has to change because you cannot win young people and people of color, African Americans, Arab Americans, Latinos, if you're going to allow that to go on and continue to put money, which the Senate is approving money to Israel. Again, you got to get it through the House, see what happens there. You have to make a clear distinction. That, to me, as a policy initiative, has to be a change for him. But if he does that, and after last night's comments that it's over the top, that's the most he's criticized Mr. Netanyahu, I just feel there is an opportunity here for the president to get younger people to come to him. And again, as I said earlier, and I mentioned just to John Nichols before we left here, somebody like AOC, who is a Bernie Sanders protege, who is a person that understands the television skills, she's photogenic. I just feel that if you want to get to young people, she is one of the people that you want there. You're not going to get all of them. There are some people that want no part of Biden who are 23 years old, who are progressives. That being said, you got a lot of people that, follow the leader or follow what their heart tells them. That a no vote or you don't vote for Biden is a vote for Trump. A vote for Bobby Kennedy is a vote for Trump. A vote for Cornel West, as much as I love the dude, is a vote for Donald Trump. And if you look at some of the issues that are around the 18 to 34-year-olds, Donald Trump's not going to help you. Not going to help you on the issue of choice. It's his party in the Supreme Court that said no more Roe v. Wade. It's his party that wants nothing to do with giving you a break to go to university. And more profit for the 1% with those private universities, Harvard, Yale, and everybody else. It's folks, that want no part of, you telling us what we want to do with war. Don't forget, you can blame the Democrats for wars of the past, but it was George W. Bush and George H. Bush which got us into 2 wars in the Middle East. So that is the Republicans. So, and they lied about the last one. I know LBJ lied about Gulf of Tonkin, but there was no weapons of mass destruction, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney. So that's what you have to think about, folks. And we have to push, as I've been saying for a long time now, we have to push President Biden. That's the only game in town. And as we said earlier with Mr. Nichols and others, until Biden says, I'm not seeking a second term, which I don't think is going to happen, until that happens, he's the guy, and we have to back him. For some people, it's going to be tough. But I tell you, what's going to be tougher and a disaster for this country is if Donald Trump somehow finds a way to cheat his way into the White House. He's the true cheater. All right, with that, let's open up the phones. 833-545-5333. Let's go to John in Minneapolis. You are next here on the Jeff Santos Show. What say you, John?
Yeah, we have to keep Trump definitely out of the White House. He should have never been in the White House to begin with. I was
That's right.
so appalled when, he came down that golden escalator, and I just thought, oh, a mafia scumbag. That's who we elected in this country, and he lived up to that reputation. I'm not saying this to, just hyperbole. I mean, there's so many things that he did in New York that he got away with, from getting illegal aliens from Poland to build Trump Tower. He got away with that. Then he bought him off. He's been
Right.
obfuscating everything from, that's how he operates. He makes billions of dollars. He's a grifter. And he's now learned the system. So he's going to be an authoritarian wannabe. He will so screw up that our federal government, it will take decades maybe to undo it. I don't know. I'm just saying this is my concern. So of course,
Right.
I'm
Of course
going
you
to
will.
do everything I can to elect Trump. But that being said, that
To elect
not
Biden,
elect
you
Trump.
mean?
The Democratic Party. Yeah, right. Not not elect
Little
Trump
slip
or
there. I
elect
understand.
Biden. Exactly. Yeah, well, I have somebody else in the background here talking to
No,
me.
no,
It's
no. I
too
hear you.
hard
I
for
hear
me.
you. No
You know,
worries.
and no, and I do want to bring up. I'm 67. My wife's 70. I'm sorry, but we don't live forever. These young people must really be frustrated because when I was growing up, elected officials were young. In the rest of the world, mostly they're young. Look at
Yeah.
Macron. Look at
Yeah.
the Canadian. Look at Trudeau. I wouldn't necessarily agree with any of their politics, but this is really pathetic. They're like the undead. But hey, it's okay. I think he is trying and he can, accomplish it. But why would you, want to shuffle around up to the podium? It takes him like 5 seconds to take his aviator glasses off. It's so silly when, there were so many other people that could have
Yeah.
run and
Well,
would
I
have
think
been
that
able
there's
to
an important
grab the
piece
young
of
vote.
this that I think that a
Yeah,
lot of people will come to compromise. I think that that Biden, if he is not able to do it, should step aside. If he is, then he should continue. But
yeah,
even if he continues, he
right,
should make it clear that there's kind of a line of
yeah,
succession, not just Harris. That whether you want to
right.
appoint a different team and get them ready for the second term, that puts Gavin
Well,
Newsom in the
yeah,
White House in some position. Maybe you move
yeah,
Harris into the Supreme Court or or to the Attorney
yeah,
General. Obviously, Garland is a waste of space.
yeah.
Whether Bernie Sanders has a bigger role, maybe as a chief
Uh,
of staff if
yeah,
he wants to leave the Senate, whatever. But
yeah,
there are a lot of different things you can do, and put people like AOC and
exactly.
Cory Bush and Jayapal out on the hustings and get them as younger people of color to go out
Yeah,
there and communicate the message. I think you got to do all that regardless if you
exactly.
leave
Yeah,
or as you stay, because you got to have this
right.
transition. People are going to say, well, what happens if something happens to you in 2025 or 2026, God forbid? But where's the rest of the team here? So I think you have to do that too,
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that
yeah,
there is a game plan for that. If you
exactly. Yeah,
agree. Yeah.
it's really interesting, where we're at in this country, politically, culturally, and every other way. And it's like we have to work our way out of the bottom of the well. That's the
Mm,
way I look at it. But that's where we're at, and that's what we have to do. And let's get on with it. And young people, I think, are very impatient, and I hope they don't take all their marbles and go home because we have a two-party system. This is the way it works. And even in a parliamentary system, where the leader loses faith with the public, like who was it? You
Margaret
know,
Thatcher.
George Bush's sidekick. No, George Bush's sidekick was I can't remember his name. I can see his face, but see, I'm 67, so this is what happens to you. Like,
You're
I'll think
losing it.
about it
I don't know if
after
you're
I get
talking
off
about Cameron
the
or,
show,
or
but
any of these guys, John Major, whomever.
no,
But
it's before. No, it's before Cameron. He
so
was the
Tony
one that
Blair.
the coalition of the willing. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Tony
Tony
Blair.
Blair.
What a piece
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
The
what?
puppy dog.
Yeah, and I talked one time with a British woman on a long train ride, and I said, "How does that work in your country when, you have the largest demonstration in the history, 1,000-year history of the entire United Kingdom, and he
Hmm.
survives that? Like, how does
Yeah.
that work? I mean, we shouldn't be electing kings." And that's what it's
Right.
become, not just in this
Yep.
country, but in the UK too. But I want true democracy, and that's what everybody else wants, and it works. We've
Yeah.
had that before,
No, we
not
have.
this
I mean,
kind
look,
of
we were
sham
on our way, and
democracy
I've said this many
where
times, John, and
everything,
I
yeah,
appreciate the call.
yeah,
But if
no,
you
I'm
look back,
sorry.
going back to that's all right, to the 1960s or the
Yeah,
1930s, when you go Roosevelt, you go Truman, you go Eisenhower, Kennedy, and LBJ up to 66, when the change put a ton of money and a ton of troops into Vietnam. That has changed our history. That has changed our culture. We've become more violent society ever since that happened. But we were headed in the right direction. Civil rights, voting rights, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all came out of that 33-year window. And I just think about the fact that if we could have continued on that, if we didn't go into Vietnam where 60,000 Americans would lose their lives and so many others would be injured with PSDs and everything else. And I just look at that time period that happened, that you lived through. I was born in the 60s. But the point is that the American people were, I think, looking to continue that. And they saw the country split up, and the Republicans have just basically made it worse ever since, whether it's Nixon or Reagan or the Bushes or the last guy, I won't even mention his name. But, this is where, the Democratic Party has to take a direction and say, look, we were building something and we went awry. We made mistakes in Vietnam in particular, and other places and other policies too. And I think this, to me, is a critical component, which is why you need somebody to communicate that, which is why I've been saying that people like Sanders, yes, he is older, but AOC is 35 years of age. She could actually run for president if she wanted to. I think you become 35 the inauguration day, or maybe the day of the election. I'm not sure which one it is. But that, to me, is you have to communicate that message. And as many people who listen to the show over the years, and people like Harvey Kay and Alan Minsky, who've come up with the second economic Bill of Rights coming off of FDR's in 44, which he never got to implement, that this is an avenue. This is the bridge. We talked about back in the late 90s, Bill Clinton did this thing of the bridge to the 21st century. I remember I was in a speech, he was looking over Jack London Square and the Bay Bridge, where we did this speech in Oakland, California. And, it was building the bridge to the 21st century. And that's a future message. And it's a message that the Democrats can carry because they have been a future, thinking party. There was John Kennedy put a man on the moon. It was Martin Luther King, who was more of a Democrat in philosophically speaking. He never really registered as a Democrat. And of course, a lot of African Americans prior to King kind of getting behind Kennedy in 1960, that famous speech by a famous call by Harris Wofford, giving the phone to Kennedy, and that changed a lot of things. And then later, Jackie Robinson, a longtime Republican in 64, said, I want no more of the Barry Goldwater Republican Party. So, but, that is where the Democrats have been. They have to get back to that. And this is why it's so important to embrace young people now who have visions on climate change, who have a vision on free public university. And again, one of the people urging this is the oldest guy in the room in a lot of cases, and that's 81-year-old going on 41, Bernie Sanders. So, that's where we kind of all have to come together on this, folks. And I tell you, over the next few weeks, we're going to try to put together a puzzle here and give you some folks who can kind of give you the history. Of course, we haven't talked to our good friend Harvey Kay in a while. Look at him and what he has done studying FDR. But at the same time, looking at the future and some of the younger voices, which we want to have on here, those of Generation Z, and what they want. They have had in this device here that I'm looking at, the great iPhone, the ability to look anything up they want. What did FDR say in 1935? Or what was the scenario in LBJ's decision to put all those troops into Vietnam? Whatever the case may be, they have the thing that I know I didn't. I got to go to LexisNexis at the library in the 1980s. But I can tell you 1990s. But I tell you what the situation is that if people think at age 20 or 25 that they can make a difference, and it doesn't have to be in the world that everybody has to be running for president. We don't need all that. What we need is somebody who's concerned about their neighborhood, concerned about their community. And if a 22-year-old out of college, like a guy named Barack Obama, by the way, wants to become a community organizer, wants to help, get people of color, think about Latinos coming into certain cities, having to learn the language, and at the same time, become part of the culture in those particular communities. If you speak Spanish, if you one of those things that you learned in college, you take that, now you can work with a whole new group of recent immigrants into the country. Think that would help. All right, folks, we're in a little overtime today. We wish you a happy Super Bowl weekend. I'm torn between the Niners and the Chiefs. I'm for Miss Swift, but I'm also for San Francisco with my buddy Mark there in 49er land. So we'll see what happens. I'm wearing red, so I will vote for both teams. I want to thank Freddie Santori and Josh for producing this broadcast a little overtime today. Thank them for fixing everything. Folks, keep on fighting peacefully. Back on Monday. Until then, have yourself a great weekend. My name is Jeff Santos, and I gotta go.